Hello everyone and welcome back to Green Magic. This will be card draw episode 1. This one is about attack draw. Honestly, this is probably the one that I think would be one of the weakest forms of card draw in green. The primary reason is that this requires you to play a creature, have it survive for a round, then have at least one of your opponents be open with no blockers that you can attack, then you have to deal combat damage to them, then you can draw. And that's not very good. Obviously, you have to wait a while to get it. You have to avoid a board wipe in the meantime, and there's just no guarantee. So I would generally think that if you are building a deck, you would want to make the other types of card draw your primary focus, and then maybe one or two of these in the card draw dedicated slots. Or if you wanted to go ahead and go overboard with card draw, go ahead and add 2 or 3 extra card draws in the form of attack draw and generate extra value that way and really just overwhelm your opponents with card advantage. The thing that I noticed while kind of coming up with what falls into this category is there are certain types of decks that you would really want to take advantage of these cards in. Any deck that is looking to attack and deal combat damage and win through combat damage will take advantage of these cards, but really it's the decks that always want you to attack, that want you to just swing out every single turn and generally benefit you in some way for doing that. So the first card that I even thought of was that Thantis, the War Weaver. It is a 6 mana, including black, red, and green. It's a 5/5 spider. It's pretty new. It's from Commander 18. It has Vigilance Reach, and it says all creatures attack each combat if able. That's your creatures, your opponent's creatures, all creatures. They all attack. It also says whenever a creature attacks you or a planeswalker you control, put a 1/1 counter on it. So obviously, if you want everybody to attack anyway, you might as well have some of your creatures, when they attack, draw you cards and gain advantage that way. The next one would be Rurik Thar, the Unbowed. This one is also 6 mana. It includes a red and a green. It's a 6/6 Ogre Warrior. It also has Vigilance Reach. And it says it attacks each combat if able. So it doesn't require your whole team to. And it says whenever a player casts a non-creature spell, Rurik Thar deals 6 damage to that player. So if he's going to attack each combat, well, you probably either want to pump him up, which Voltron isn't really an option because he deals 6 damage to you every time you cast an aura or an equipment or just an instant or sorcery that pumps him up. Or you want him to have plenty of buddies that if your opponent blocks him, your buddies will get in. If they block the other guys, he gets in for 6 commander. But you want probably to have a good team of attackers in that case. Third would be Marisi, Breaker of the Coil. 4 mana, including red, green, white. It's a 5/4 cat warrior. It says your opponents can't cast spells during combat. So it avoids combat tricks. Not very big in Commander, but it does say whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, goad each creature that player controls. Now, goad, of course, means that their creatures, all creatures that are goaded, have to attack a player, and preferably not you, if able. So if you have at least 3 creatures that you can get in, 1 per opponent, then you goad all of each of their creatures, and so you're damaging them, they're not damaging you. Great way to benefit off of that is if you're also drawing cards in the process. So it's just a way to kind of synergize with what he wants to do anyway, which is make sure that you damage at least each of your opponents with 1 creature, and then their creatures are no longer a threat to you. Then I thought of Jedit Ojanen of Efrava. He's a 6 mana, including triple green, 5/5 cat warrior. He has Forest Walk, and whenever whenever it attacks or blocks, create a 2/2 green cat warrior creature token with Forest Walk. Now your first thought might be just cat tribal. And admittedly, whenever I intend to build this deck, my deck list already is just cat tribal. But there's nothing that says cat tribal about him. He just wants to attack or block, but mostly attack. You can control your own attacks. Now, a great way to make sure that he is either going to stay safe, or even if your opponents choose to block him, you want other bodies around him to make sure that something is getting through. Because if he's just sitting there not attacking, not doing anything, your deck's not functioning. So, and you don't generally want to send him out by himself because he's more likely to be blocked, double locked, killed in some way. So what you can see from all of these is that most of them are pretty cheap. They're all under $1. But these are still, you know, a decent number of commander decks, between $6.50 and $9.25 roughly, with the exception of the mono green one. Then the other four, and these are all commanders that I thought of that would also greatly benefit from a attack all out every turn type style of gameplay. Kasura, Ruthless Stalker. It's a new card from the Commander 20 set. He is a 3/3 human warrior, cost 4 mana, one of its green. He partners with Ukima Stalking Shadow. Don't care about that. What he says is whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, put a 1/1 counter on that creature. So again, he just wants you to attack with whatever you've got. As soon as those creatures deal damage, they get bigger. The creatures are also drawing cards in the process. Great, you're double benefiting, you're just synergizing really well. The next one, Questing Beast, 4 mana, double green. He is a 4/4 beast. He's got a load of abilities. Vigilance, Death Touch, Haste. Sure. Can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less. Okay. Combat damage that would be dealt by creatures you control can't be prevented. That's important. And then finally, whenever he deals combat damage to an opponent, he deals that much damage to target planeswalker that player controls. Sure. That will often not even matter. The best way to build this creature, I think, is generally going to be Fog Tribal. You attack with all your creatures, your opponent declares their blocks, you fog the damage, which will only stop their damage. So your creatures, either if they're bigger and can trample, or if they're the same size and would trade, or if you got a small Death Toucher, your small Death Toucher will kill their bigger creature, and then all the other ones will just get through and do their damage normally. So you can attack at will without really any consequence, and if you're playing, you know, kind of a Fog Tribal, you're going to have plenty of them in your hand for when your opponents maybe build up their board and want to attack back. So he's sort of an attack without even consequences commander. Next would be Sakiko, Mother of Summer. 6 mana, including double green. 3/3 Snake Shaman. And basically what she does is whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you get that much green mana till end of turn. That's powerful. That's something that you would probably want to include in any combat-based deck anyway, just in the 99, and she will generate you so much mana, which, even though this video in particular will focus on card draw as being what you would benefit from combat damage or attacking, there are plenty of other cards that benefit you from attacking in other ways. Kastar was a good example on giving your team 1/1 counters. The Sakiko gives you mana. The previous commanders you saw, Jeddik gives you a token creature. Marisi goads your opponents so that they have to start attacking each other, etc., etc. But Sakiko, if she is your commander, you can rest assured, I mean, having a guaranteed way to generate mana for main phase 2, pretty powerful. Definitely should be used if you're doing any kind of deck with a lot of combat actions. Then finally, the last commander that I wanted to point out was Sashiro the Anointed. Also 6 mana, double green, 3/4 Snake Monk. Other snakes you control get +2/+2, and whenever a snake you control deals combat damage to a player, you may draw a card. Now this one screams snake tribal. The other ones don't really care about tribes so much. If you're gonna make a snake tribal deck, whether he's the commander or someone else's, great. This is definitely going to include. It's obvious. Go with that. But if you're just putting him in the 99 of another deck, 6 mana, 3 power, when he deals damage, draw a card. Not great, but also not very intimidating either. Your opponents aren't likely to waste their removal on him. So if you get an open attack, then sure, chip in for a few damage and also draw a card while you're at it. But he is going to be more limited in use, if not part of a build around for the Snake Tribe. So the first actual card draw that I wanted to bring up was a fairly popular one that most of you are probably familiar with, Hunter's Insight. It's a 3 mana, including 1 green. It's an instant. It says, choose target creature you control. Whenever that creature deals combat damage to a player or planeswalker this turn, draw that many cards. So the fact that it's at instant speed is what makes this one valuable compared to some other ones. You attack with 3 creatures. Let's say none of them have trample, so it's like a 5/5, a 5/5, and a 5/5. No trample. Your opponent has 2 blockers. They chump 2 of them. You cast this on the one that's unblocked. You draw 5 cards. Very simple. The fact that it also applies when you attack, or rather deal damage to a planeswalker, is also pretty relevant, that most of the other cards don't give you that benefit. So, slight benefit there, but the key is that you do it at instant speed so that you can just pick whatever ended up not blocked. And the next one is Hunter's Prowess. 5 mana, including a single green. This one's a sorcery. What it does is, until end of turn, target creature gets +3/+3, trample, and whenever it deals combat damage to a player, draw that many cards. The fact that you have to do it during main phase 1, so your opponents know what creature they want to block, definitely a huge setback. That's a disadvantage for you. It's kind of bad. Or it can be. The fact that it gives the creature trample could make all the difference in the world. If you have a relatively big creature, let's take a big creature like Gigantosaurus, 10/10 no trample, they can chump block it with a 1/1 token and not even care, doesn't matter. This will make it a 13/13, sure, doesn't matter. 13/13 with trample. So if they block it with whatever they actually care about, you can end up killing creatures that are somewhat important to their game plan, or, would be problematic blockers, maybe a Death Toucher or 2, and still end up drawing 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 cards. There's a pretty good bonus that you can get for that +3/+3 and trample. And even if you end up putting it on something kind of middle of the road, like a 3/3 or 4/4 creature, just pumping them up can be huge. You don't necessarily even have to care about the card draw. You could just care about the trample. So this card is somewhat versatile, and which part of it do you even care about? Here's where we get to some of the weaker stuff. The stuff that you're probably not... I wouldn't encourage you to just go out and throw it in decks willy-nilly. This is Hystrodon. It's a 5 mana, including a green, 3/4 beast. It has trample, cool. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you may draw a card. It also has morph, but if you're playing a morph deck, here you go. If not, you don't care. 5 mana, 3 power, not great, not what you're looking for, but it does draw you a card every time it hits an opponent. If you got a deck full of combat buffs, maybe it's 3/4 body isn't a big deal. If your opponent doesn't have any blockers, sure. The main benefit, I think, to a card like this, which isn't great, by the way, I don't want to make it sound like it is that it's not at all intimidating. One of the things that I think a lot of people mess up in Commander is they see a big important card, something like a doubling season or, a similar effect. And they're very powerful, very effective, but they draw the removal. A thing like this is not going to get wiped out. If your opponent's going to waste a Path to Exile or a Murder or anything like that on this creature, you're good. You're happy with that trade. You won that exchange. But they're not going to. So, assuming you can get through with it and it sticks around for a while, for just by virtue of laying low, you can generate a little bit of card draw, and this can benefit you. So I think it's good in lower power level decks, things that don't have a lot of board wipes, things where you feel like you have time to, cast it, wait a turn, attack with it again. And, yeah, I mean, that's about all I can say about it. Oh, also, this is a perfect example of how I was saying before, where if you have a card draw package of, let's say, 10, and this is part of the 10, you're doing bad. That's not what you want. If you got a card draw package of 10, and then you tack on this card and other cards like it on top of that, that's where it's actually good, because you're flooding your deck with extra card draw abilities without relying on this. If you rely on the card draw of this card, you done screwed up. So the next one after that weakling is one of the more powerful ones of this type, and that's Keeper of Fables. It's a 5 mana, including double green, 4/5. So its body is actually pretty good considering, 5 mana, 4/5. That's one of the things that stands out to me as being pretty respectable. It's a cat creature, and whenever one or more non-human creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, draw a card. So if you attack each of your 3 opponents and deal damage to them, you draw 3 cards. If you got double strikers and attack each of your 3 opponents and deal damage to each of them, you could draw 6 cards in one turn. That's just awesome, and could and should go in any deck that is looking to deal combat damage. And the bonus here too is that it's not requiring itself to do that damage. So if you have you play other creatures, they have summoning sickness, you wait a turn, you slap him down on main phase 1, you attack with the other creatures that are now able to. Summoning sickness is not a relevant factor in hindering this ability. So that's very powerful and huge relative to the other ones. And it's dirt cheap, it's very budget. This should be included in a lot more decks. So after that is easily one of the weaker cards in this whole video. Kithkin Mourncaller, 3 mana, including a single green. It's a 2/2 Kithkin Scout. Whenever an attacking Kithkin or elf is put into your graveyard from play, you may draw a card. I actually have quite a bit to say about this one. So 1, if you happen to be playing Kithkin Tribal, this is an obvious include. 1, because it's not a very supported tribe, and you need every Kithkin you can get. And 2, because it does give you extra benefit, and that's just always good. 2, I love the art. The fact that he's standing on that podium, he's giving like a decree, he's got the open scroll. I just think it looks cool, and I would like to see it on the playmat going forward. It just looks, I like it. I like the art. And that's reason enough to play cards sometimes. But then the elf part is the thing that should draw a lot of attention. Think of how many elves you play for utility, but then they don't matter after a point. Elvish Visionary, you drop it for 2 mana to draw a card. Reclamation Sage, you drop it to destroy an artifact or enchantment. Wood Elves, you drop it to get a a forest out of your library. If most of the time those creatures will just sit on your battlefield because you don't want to swing with them because they won't do any damage, and your opponents almost certainly have a bigger creature that they can block it with and just kill it for no reason. So you just leave it there as a chump blocker, hoping that your opponents have a non-flying, non-trampoly big creature that one of those guys will do their job and chump. Here's a good way to actually be able to swing with those creatures and not care what happens. Either they deal, 3-4 chip damage, and you're happy with that, because that's more than you would have ever gotten out of those weaklings anyway. Or your opponents do end up killing them, and then you're happy because you just drew a few cards. I think that's actually a good thing to put into an elf deck, or a deck with a lot of elves in it, rather, that could actually help you recoup benefit from those other cards that have one utility and then are afterwards useless. Again, like an Elvish Visionary is a great example, because once he's entered, once he's done that one thing, that card is basically useless. And this can at least give you some use out of them. Yeah, it's not a great card, just something that you could throw in for fun. Definitely, I think it would overperform relative to the extremely low expectations. So next is a card that actually sees CEDH play, Oakhame Adversary. 4 mana, including a single green. It's a 2/3 elf warrior, but he does cost 2 less to cast if an opponent controls a green permanent. He has Death Touch, and whenever he deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. Now, the card draw is the reason that he's on this list. It's the reason that he's CEDH, and that's pretty much what you want to be doing with him once he doesn't have Summoning Sickness, is just swing out, swing out, swing out. At least for the first turn, while he does have Summoning Sickness, because he has Death Touch, he would make a great blocker, a great deterrent for someone wanting to swing their bigger, scarier, important creature at you. On attacking, well, maybe your opponent has like some 1/1 tokens or other things that they don't care about, maybe aristocrats type stuff. But if they do have limited supplies, maybe something that they care about, important stuff, are they going to make that trade? Probably not. They're probably just going to let you chip in for 2 damage and draw a card in the process. So it's one of those things where it's not threatening enough from the combat damage standpoint for them to want to block it, because they end up losing something greater in that process. So that's where it can actually generate some value, and it is very budget. So next is Ohran Frostfang. 5 mana, including double green. It's a 2/6 snake, and it gives all of your attacking creatures Death Touch, and whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. Now this is like that card that we just did a few moments ago, where it doesn't need to do the damage itself. You can cast your other creatures, wait a turn so that they get over their Summoning Sickness, plop this down on main phase 1, attack with the other creatures, then benefit off of it. The thing that makes this one even stronger is you could hit, all of your creatures have Death Touch when they attack, so opponents are going to be more weary to block them. And also, this applies to each creature that deals combat damage to a player. So if you swung 5 creatures at one guy, 3 creatures at another, and 3 creatures at the other one, and they all get through, you draw 11 cards. That's pretty great. And the fact that he has a big butt, the fact that he is 2/6, is very important defensively, because it means that you just keep him as a blocker usually, and he can stop some bigger, more important things. Like he can stop like a 5/5 and they just bounce off each other, and it's not really a problem. There's a good reason why this card sees a lot of play. But the other card, the one that is very similar to this, because this one came from Commander 19, the one that's just a few years older, Ohran Viper, which is 3 mana, including double green. This one is a 1/3 snake. This one says whenever it deals combat damage to a creature, destroy that creature at end of combat. And whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you may draw a card. So this one does need to deal the combat damage itself in order to draw the card. So that's a lot weaker. Obviously, its body is weaker. It's a 1/3. But the thing that's really bad is that whenever it deals combat damage to a creature, you destroy that creature at end of combat. So it is slow death touch. Meaning if somehow you gave this creature first strike, this creature would hit the other one, then the other one would survive, then during normal damage, the other one would hit back, possibly with 3 or greater power, killing him, then at the end of combat, the other creature would die. That's just not, that's not that great. That's kind of bad, but it is only 40 cents, and again, if you've already got a very solid, draw package, and you're just adding in a few extra creatures that have a bonus like this to give yourself extra card draw, by all means, throw it in. It's budget, it's cheap, and it's 3 mana, so you can get it out pretty early. It's not terrible, but do realize that the value of it is not super high. So just as long as you have kind of reasonable expectations for what this card should generate for you. The next one is Overwhelming Instinct. 3 mana, including a green. This one's an enchantment. It says whenever you attack with 3 or more creatures, draw a card. So this one's kind of great if you're doing anything token or go wide strategy. This one definitely will give you added benefit if combined with the other cards in this video. It's very budget. It should probably see a little bit more play because it's definitely going to put in some work during a combat based deck, but it's not a great card. It doesn't care who you attack. They don't all have to attack the same player. They don't have to deal combat damage. So if you happen to have, just a handful of little 1/1 tokens somehow that you don't care about, but you're desperate for cards, throw them at somebody and generate value. Or even if you got 3 big creatures and you're actually expecting to deal combat damage, do that and draw some cards in the process. I think the benefit to this card is that it is an enchantment, so it will survive the creature board wipe. So, you get a few creatures out, you attack with them, you draw the card, a board wipe happens, you put out a few more creatures, eventually you attack with those, you draw more cards, and another board wipe happens. So it'll survive those kinds of things, and you won't necessarily miss out over the long game. You're playing the long game with this card, I think, and it will benefit you in that regard. Also, because, again, it is not an intimidating card, it is not a priority card, it's generally going to sit behind the doubling seasons and the far more flashy cards that will draw out the removal. So, unless someone just happens to cast a card that says, destroy 2 artifacts and an enchantment, and this is the only enchantment in play, it should be safe. The next one doesn't necessarily fit the pattern of all the others on this. It's Ripjaw Raptor. 4 mana, including double green. It's a 4/5, so very good stats for 4 mana. I'd definitely be happy about that with, extra benefits. It's a dinosaur, and it has the Enrage ability. The Enrage ability basically says, whenever this creature is dealt damage, blank. In this case, whenever it's dealt damage, draw a card. So this one could actually be a lot of fun for how tricky you can be with it. On the one hand, especially while it's summoning sick, if someone wants to attack you with a bigger creature or something, it's like, okay, well, I'll jump block with this guy. Maybe he'll die, but I'll draw a card. So he's almost like just a cantrip of himself or something. If the other creature is kind of medium power, maybe they they trade. If your opponent maybe has like a solemn simulacrum, you can go a little bit political and say, hey, attack me with that. I'll kill it so you'll draw a card, and also I'll draw a card. So if you do want to go in that direction, you can take advantage of that. But it can also be a deterrent, like I said, for people attacking you. But as soon as it's able to attack, I just swing every turn. You have nothing to lose. Because if it is blocked, if it's chump blocked, you draw a card. If it's blocked by something bigger, it dies, you draw a card. If it's not blocked, you just got 4 free points of damage in. Your opponent doesn't really have a great option there, and you have nothing to lose. So again, this is one of those cards that's a great addition to a deck that already has a good solid draw package, and you're just kind of sprinkling on a little bit extra. And I think that this would complement very well to an already good draw package. So the next one is one that I assume most of you are probably most familiar with. You've all probably seen the sword cycle. Hopefully they'll finish that soon. In this case, it is Sword of Fire and Ice. Now, all of the swords cost 3 to cast, 2 to equip. All of the swords give +2/+2, and they give you protection from 2 colors: fire, ice, red, blue. And then they all give you 2 abilities whenever you deal combat damage to a player. With this one, the sword will do 2 damage to any target, and you draw a card. Draw a card, pretty obvious. So, the 2 damage to any target, maybe you kill a small creature, maybe you hit a planeswalker and can either kill that or bring it away from ultimate, or maybe you just deal 2 extra damage to a player that's annoying you. Whatever. And if you have double strike, then you get double the benefit. Sure, whatever. Don't care. The key is that the Pro Red, Pro Blue can give you extra evasion so that they don't block with their red or blue creatures. And you draw a card. Very beneficial. Very good card. Definitely the most expensive one of this series. And as you can see, it's also the only one in this video that has 3 different arts. Yeah, this is definitely a staple in Commander, and it's more directed for actual Voltron decks where you want like one key creature doing big things, as opposed to basically everything that this video would synergize with, which is kind of going wide, just attack all out with whatever strategies. So, not great, not terribly similar to the others, but it definitely does the same basic thing and should be considered, assuming that you're willing to spend that kind of money for it. The next one, this one really kind of doesn't feel like it even fits with what this video is talking about. Treeshaker Chimera, 7 mana including double green. He is an 8/5. Again, pretty respectable stats right there relative to the mana cost. He's a Chimera. All creatures able to block Treeshaker Chimera do so, and whenever it dies, draw 3 cards. So its 2 abilities are very relevant. And so the second ability, when he dies, draw 3 cards, that makes it sound like it belongs in one of the other draw videos that you're going to be seeing soon. The one that has death triggers to draw cards, because it happens when he dies. Sure, you could sacrifice him to some effect, like a Phyrexian Arena, Ashnod's Altar, something like that. Sorry, Ashnod's Altar, not Phyrexian Arena. Ashnod's Altar. Or Phyrexian Altar. Or you could sacrifice him to like Survival of the Fittest, something like that. Or you could block if someone happens to be attacking you, draw the 3 cards. But the main thing that you're going to do is attack with him, because he has an ability that you'll see in green where a creature, one of your creatures, has to be blocked by all other creatures that your opponent controls. And the benefit to that ability is all your other creatures are safe. They'll all get in for damage, which is great if they don't have if they don't have trample. And it's also great if your opponent has a go wide, they've just got a ton of different blockers where they could chump for days. And it's good if all of your other guys are really small and weak and, they would die in combat. And because he's got 8 power, that means if your opponent has, something big or important, or maybe 2 or 3 kind of medium-sized important creatures, he doubles his removal. He protects your other creatures, guaranteeing that they get in. He removes whatever creatures your opponent is blocking with that you want to get rid of most. And when he dies, it draws you 3 cards. So this doesn't trigger on attack or when he deals damage. So it kind of doesn't fit with the rest of the card draws of this video. But considering how little play he's seen, how cheap he is, this card is way underplayed. Definitely belongs in any deck with either a go wide strategy, any deck that wants a big 7 mana creature, kind of goes with anything, because that first ability is one that it's very old. I can think of like Taunting Elf going way back as a 0/1 creature that just says all creatures block it, and it's just a great strategy that people should probably try to use more of. And this one gives you the added benefit of also removing the other creatures that is blocked by. So the next one, definitely on the low end of the power scale here. Watchful Naga, 3 mana, including a green. It's a 2/2 Naga Wizard. You may exert it as it attacks. When you do, draw a card. So this one is kind of a poster child for how weak the draw 1 attacks type of card draw is. Because it's not very strong as a creature. And in this case, you have to exert it, which, for those of you unfamiliar, it's like icing it. It does not untap the next go around. But I think it could actually perform better than what you think or might expect. The fact is, it's 3 mana, so you get it out early. Chances are one of your opponents doesn't have a blocker. If they do, you can attack with it, draw a card, it lives, it chips in 2 damage. If they do have a blocker, you attack with it, you exert it, you draw a card, they kill it, so what? Now, if they don't have a blocker, if it does live, then your next turn it doesn't untap. The turn after that, you do the same again and you draw a second card, assuming that there's no board wipe. So, which is again the risk with these on attack draw a card creatures, is that you have to cast them, wait a turn, no board wipe, no removal, attack with them, maybe they survive, hopefully, then the next time, and so on. They are not super reliable. If this one does just draw you the 1 card, fine, it's not a big deal. It only costs you 3. You're not investing a lot into it, but you would never expect an opponent to remove this thing. It's very safe in the sense that it's not intimidating. Your opponents are not going to target it or you or see you as a threat. And not that this is some huge synergy combo, but suppose you have like a Seedborn Muse on the battlefield. You untap them during one of your opponent's turns. Now you can attack with them every turn and draw the extra card. So there are ways to get extra benefit from them and make them not terrible. But again, the fact that he's only a few cents, he's the cheapest card in this video, that could be a very good reason in itself to include him in a deck. But he does not belong in a powerful deck. Don't throw him in expecting him to be, some big flashy play. Just know that he's reasonable. He can do a little bit of good for you. So the next one, Keen Sense. It just costs 1 green mana. It's an aura, and it says whenever enchanted creature deals damage to an opponent, you may draw a card. So This one would obviously go in like an enchantment, enchantress, aura, any kind of Voltron that's aura based type deck. Pretty obvious there. The fact that, like some of the instants and sorceries and the creatures that give you the benefit when another creature deals damage, the fact that those ones, they don't have summoning sickness. This one benefits from that same thing, because you cast the creature one turn, you wait till it comes back and it doesn't have summoning sickness, then you attach it to it. You attach this to whatever isn't summoning sick that you can attack with right away and draw a card. And the first card draw will just replace itself, replace this. Anything after that is just added value, and at 1 mana it's pretty good. The very next card is actually going to be identical to this one, but this one I do like the art a little bit better. I just like the picture on this one better than Sixth Sense. Also 1 single green mana, also an aura. Same thing, whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, you may draw a card. I don't think the other one required combat damage. I might want to check the Oracle text on that, because that could be relevant if you're trying to get tricky. So this one, exactly the same. You just attach it to a creature that's already able to attack, swing, draw a card. The first one will replace it. After that, you're just golden. Like I said, I like the art on the previous one better, but this one is much cheaper. It's a fraction of the price, so it's definitely good for if you're trying to be conscious of that, or if you just want redundancies, include both. The next card, Mask of Memory. It's 2 mana. It's a colorless artifact equipment. It has an equip cost of 1. Whenever an equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, you may draw 2 cards. If you do, discard a card. I generally don't like this effect. I don't like discarding cards. I don't like drawing, so many and then discarding others. I just don't like it. If you have like 15 cards in hand, you draw 2 and then you discard the least valuable of the 17 cards in your hand, sure, discarding is not a big deal. If you have 1 card in hand, you go up to 3 and you have to lose one of those, that's really hard. And it just doesn't get you very far ahead. It is good if you're doing a lot of graveyard stuff. Something like a Muldrotha, where you just want to put stuff in the graveyard because graveyard is basically your hand anyway. So if you don't care about that, it's very good. And it is pretty budget, but it's just not an effect that I'm a fan of, because you have to discard in addition to the drawing. The next card is Rogue's Gloves. It's also an equipment. 2 mana to cast, 2 mana to equip. Whenever an equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, you may draw a card. This one actually sees a good amount of play, but it is dirt cheap, and that's actually a really good thing to probably include in a lot of combat-based decks, because even after board wipes happen, unlike an aura or the creatures themselves, this will stick around. So you rebuild, equip it to the new creatures that are coming out, swing with them, and you still get the benefit of drawing cards. So I think that this one can actually see a good amount of benefit in most decks, and it's colorless, so it'll go in any deck that might want it. Very cheap, definitely something worth considering. But you will want to factor in what the rest of your deck is doing. Does this synergize with it? All the usual stuff. Next is something that I would not want to deal with ever. Lambholt Elder is the front half of this. Costs 3 mana, including a green. It's a 1/2 human werewolf. And it has those werewolf abilities. At the beginning of each upkeep, if no spells were cast last turn, transform it. The back half is the half that you care about. It's a 4/5 werewolf, Silverpelt werewolf, and it says whenever it deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. That's why it's on this list. And at the beginning of each upkeep, if a player casts 2 or more spells last turn, transform it. I've never played one of these cards. I never want to. In 1v1, it's probably not so bad, but in a 4-player game, keeping track of this is just going to be a bear. Maybe that's exactly what you want, because it forces you to pay attention to all of your opponent's turns, and it gives you this really annoying little almost smothering type trigger during each person's upkeep, like, the previous person did this, so I'm going to flip it over during your upkeep. I'm involved at all times. Maybe you can get a kick out of it. Maybe you can enjoy that aspect of it, and force yourself to pay better attention. And if you force yourself to pay better attention, it can make you a better player. 4 or 5 body for 3 mana, not terrible. Draw you some cards, not terrible. 21 cents, very reasonable. Still not interested. Next card is Skeleton Key. This one costs 1 and 2 to equip. It's an equipment. Equipped creature has Skulk, meaning it can't be blocked by creatures with greater power. So you'll want to put this on the weakest creature you have that, generates you whatever bonus that all of these cards are doing. So this will synergize great with other weak, small things that give you a benefit when they attack or deal damage. And whenever the equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, you may draw a card. If you do, discard a card. So that is worse than the other one that had you draw 2 and discard 1. This is draw 1, discard 1. So you don't even come out ahead in card advantage. The main reason that I even included in this list is with the Skulk, you could get your creatures through if the creature itself had another benefit like card draw, so you would draw 2 and discard 1. Or again, if you're doing something with a lot of graveyard synergies and you just don't care what's in your graveyard, or maybe you've got such a great card draw engine going that, without even trying, you have 8, 9, 10 cards in hand and you don't care about discarding. You just digging deeper is more beneficial to you than having to throw something away that you don't necessarily care about too much either. And it's very budget, so yeah, there's a reason it's budget. The next card, Smuggler's Copter. This one is a 2-mana vehicle. It's a 3/3. It has flying, and whenever it attacks or blocks, you may draw a card. If you do, discard a card, and it has crew 1. I've never played with vehicles. I have no interest in playing with vehicles. The whole vehicle concept does not appeal to me, even in the slightest. I can see why it'd be beneficial. As a blocker, you just tap something with 1 power, and you got a 3/3 blocker. And especially if your opponents have like protection from colors or whatever, then this is a colorless creature that can benefit you in that way. It can effectively make your new creatures coming in that would be summoning sick able to tap to activate this, which then attacks, and so you get some benefit out of summoning sick creatures. But the benefit is that you tap it in addition to this. And this, as a 3/3, as a flyer, it's not bad. As a 3/3 for 2 mana, that's pretty good. It's the fact, again, where you draw a card and you discard a card. And that, unless you got the graveyard synergies or you just got so much card draw anyway, the kind of card draw where you wouldn't care about this effect, where discarding doesn't bother you, then sure, it's fine. But I would not think that this is going to benefit you very much at all. And that's considering everything else that's been included on this list already. The next card is Snake Umbra. 3 mana, including a green. This one's an aura, and enchanted creature gets +1/+1 and has, whenever this creature deals damage to an opponent, you may draw a card. It also has totem armor. So, +1/+1, sure, don't care. Totem armor, that's actually kind of good and important in some cases. But it's the whenever it deals damage to an opponent, you may draw a card. And again, this one doesn't say combat damage. So, if you get tricky, this one could be a very good overperforming combo piece. But for the purposes of this video, we'll just assume you're doing good, honest combat damage, and it'll just gradually get you a little bit of value each way, each turn. So at a very budget cost. It's something that you might want to include. Including too many non-creature effects that give your creatures these benefits could actually backfire a little bit, because then your deck doesn't have enough creatures that do the things that you want your creatures to do. But yeah, it's still a pretty decent card. And again, it's good for enchantment decks, enchantress decks. Obviously, anything that wants to go Voltron and just stack a bunch of auras on a single creature. That's why it's in so many decks. The next card is not that good. Warrior's Lesson. It's a single green mana, but it is an instant, and that's important. Until end of turn, up to 2 target creatures you control each gain. Whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. Now, what you could do, suppose you've got some sort of token and go wide type deck. You got 3 1/1 tokens. Your opponent has 1 blocker. You swing. Your opponent blocks one of them. You cast this targeting the other 2. Well, now you get to draw 2 cards. And you still manage to deal 2 damage, and you don't really care about the thing that died. Well, what if you got things that have double strike? Well, this thing could draw you 4 cards. What if you've got, like, Wart as your commander? Or just in the deck, so that you can double the effect of this card and draw 4 cards. What if there are ways to benefit extra on this? A couple of the other things that I think it would combo well with are Gorgos, that the Hydra commander that says whenever one of your creatures is targeted by something, he can fight something. Target 2 of your creatures, fight 2 guys. What about, I believe his name is Gnarlback Rhino, the thing that whenever he is the target of a spell, you get to draw a card. You know, he would have to be on the battlefield, but there's synergy there, so that you draw an extra card. But the other one that I think you're more likely to just see kind of in generic use is, I think it's called Season's Growth. It's the thing that, it's the 2 mana enchantment that whenever you creature ETBs, you get to scry 1, and then whenever a creature is the target of a spell, you get to draw a card. Here you go, draw 4. If you can copy this, like with the Wart, draw 8 or whatever stupid amount. So it can be synergized to way overperform, but, you know, in just by itself without any help, 1 mana, draw 2, with conditions. It's not terrible, but it is kind of terrible. Just know that this is a perfect example of how you can take a card that is on the surface very weak and not very good, and if you're a good deck builder and you see these avenues, you can make it actually pretty good. Or, you know, even if it's just kind of good, hey, you're getting that good value without anyone, while very under the radar. The next one, this one kind of breaks the rule for what I wanted to do with this video, this whole series. Explorer's Scope costs 1 mana to cost and 1 to equip, so it is an equipment. Whenever an equipped creature attacks, look at the top card of your library. If it's a land card, you may put it onto the battlefield tapped. So, it's not specifically card draw, but it is ramp and card advantage sometimes. Obviously, if you have a way to manipulate the top of your deck, like a Sensei's Divining Top type effect, then you can increase your chances every turn. But aside from not being a great card, the reason why this doesn't necessarily fit on this list is that it's more based off of ramp, or not just any card, not just the top card of your library. You get it, it's in your hand, you have it. It's not really the kind of thing that overall I wanted to include in this list. There are a couple of others that I threw in there as well, but it's not strictly card draw. And this is the other one, or at least one of the other ones. There might be another one. Hunting Cheetah, 3 mana, including a green. It's a 2/3. It's a cat. It says Cheetah on there. It's from Portal 3 Kingdoms, so it's really cool and rare. When it successfully damages your opponent, so whenever it deals combat damage to an opponent, you may search your library for a forest card, reveal it, and put it into your hand, and then shuffle afterwards. So this one doesn't ramp you because it doesn't put the land into play like the previous thing did. But you do get to search your library, which means that, you know, you're not dependent on it luckily happening to be on top. It is any forest, so if you have any dual lands, then you do get to benefit from that trickery. If your opponent, but unlike card draw, if your opponents happen to have a, your opponents can't search their library type effect, then you miss out and are disadvantaged in that sense. But this one, like some of the others, some of the cards in this list, they benefit you on attack, so you don't care if it dies. This is, or you don't care if it's chump blocked. This one, it has to deal combat damage or damage, so you needed to get through, which makes it a little bit weaker too. Considering its price tag, again, because it was Portal 3 Kingdoms, not something you should jump out at, but it does look really cool. Definitely goes in like a cat tribal deck. But for its utility, medium. The fact that it does get you a land specifically, maybe you want that just because you want to make sure that you're not mana screwed. Sometimes with card draw, you get all lands and you need spells. Sometimes with card draw, you get all non-lands and you're just mana screwed. This one, sometimes having that effect where it guarantees it is a land is beneficial, but probably not worth the price tag unless you just don't care about price. The next one is Sword of the Animist. It costs 2 mana to cost and 2 to equip. It is a legendary equipment. This is one that you're probably going to be most familiar with because it is in a ton of decks. The equipped creature gets +1/+1. Sure. And then whenever it attacks, you may search your library for a basic land and put it on the battlefield tapped. So it just has to attack. You could just keep equipping this to, weak chump, tokens that you don't care about. Of course, you'd have to keep paying the equip cost, so it won't necessarily be worth it, but you even if you attack, there's a board wipe, you rebuild, you attach it, you attack, it's pretty easy to recover. The fact that it goes on the battlefield tap means that you are ramping. The fact that you're getting an extra card means that you get the card advantage. But like with the previous couple of cards, I don't necessarily want to make a habit of including these types of things in the card draw series because it's not directly card draw. You don't just get whatever happens to be on top of your library. It makes you search for a specific thing. And like the previous one, like an even mind sensor just shuts that down. So, search your library effects have a different weakness than draw effects. And so I do want to keep those separated for the most part. But I did include these ones in this video together just to kind of help show even more synergy with the attack at will type style and strategy and those commanders and everything that kind of goes along with them that can generate that extra value. That's it for this video. The next one should be coming out soon. That one will be all about ETB draw. That's the enter the battlefield effects. So keep an eye out for that one. Bye.